year, Flight Lieutenant Charles Alexander Irvine died in New Zealand. Unfortunately, he was only identified as a surviving member of the 454 Squadron, and he did not know of our existence until only months before his death. So, very sad that we did not have a chance to get to know him. On the 25th of July 2011, Flight Lieutenant Norm Gilham passed away in Victoria. But again, we were only just made aware of his passing in March of this year via a newspaper tribute in the local paper. So we really need to improve our communications and know who is part of us and keep in touch. Now, I was going to do something, but first John is going to stand up and give a toast to the Queen. I think that will require our elevation.
I'm John McMahon from 454 Squadron.
As if we didn't know.
Thank you all for coming along to the march and the Kitty Hawk restaurant. Many thanks also to members of the committee who organised the march and this new reception. I was supposed to talk about my life in 454, but my daughter was taken over, so you might hear her later. My role is to toast the Queen, and I hope she had a nice birthday. The Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen. The
Queen. You read the next bit or not?
Absent.
Toast to absent friends.
A toast to absent friends.
Any chance to have a drink, mate? All right, now, the ode, I just want to give a little bit of background here. The ode comes from the poem, For the Fallen, by the English poet and writer Lawrence Binyon, and was published in September 1914. There are 7 stanzas or verses in this poem. The 4th verse was officially adopted by the Returned Services League in 1921. The ode.
They shall not grow old, as we that live grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
The next bit.
We'll now have a minute's silence, lest we forget. Thank you, John.
That was a very good speech of mine, I thought.
Most of the memorabilia you see here on display has recently been sourced from a Canadian lady, Maureen Flynn. Her late father, Henry Flynn, was a radar specialist in the Royal Canadian Air Force, but found himself stationed with both of our squadrons in Libya. He was sure glad the Aussies were on our side. She wrote, "Thank you so much for keeping in touch. When I hear from you, I do not miss my dad quite as much." She has also asked us to read out this message, not knowing exactly who might be gathered here today. It reads, "To the men of the RAAF and the RCAF, Squadrons 454 and 459, together you served with honour, pride and sacrifice. Thank you for your service, lest we forget." Also about a month ago, we were alerted to a war diary being auctioned for sale on eBay. This diary belonged, in fact, to the late Norm Gilham, who I've just read out, and we thought it would be great if we could buy it. But bidding initiated by your treasurer, Michael, was very fierce at the end, and it eventually sold for more than $550 to somebody else. But Michael thought we might have a chance to still contact the original owner and see if he could copy it for us before sending to the buyer. And he agreed to do it for free. So We now have the full version of this handwritten diary, which can be viewed in Norm Gillam's webpage on our 454-459 website. The new website, this has been such a big project during the year, but was virtually a solo effort by our esteemed treasurer, Michael. He has invested countless hours of his own time to completely reinvigorate our website.
That's why he was nicknamed Duba. And by the way, it has been passed to the family entirely. So our whole family do talk this way. Can you pass that thingy bob and so forth? John was born in Marrickville in Sydney on the 27th of October in 1923 and was the youngest of many siblings and attended a local school which was a nun school and lived quite a poor life as it was at that time in the 20s. There were not many people who were quite wealthy. It was hard times even back then. According to John, Marrickville was the most boring suburb in Sydney at that time. He must have learnt some of his boring jokes from there. And his only sport was yo-yos, at which he became very proficient and was a yo-yo champion at the age of 12. And we do have proof of that. There is a trophy somewhere, but we'll get that up on the website. Fortunately for John, his family moved to Manly in Sydney, where he became Manly's best roller skater. Well, this is what he tells us. I'll tell you now, later on we found out that the two of the best roller skaters had moved and gone to other places, and a couple of them were called up to actually go overseas and to in the Air Force already. So that's why he was the one that was the best roller skater at the time. John left school at the age of 15 years, and after failing 4 subjects out of 8 in the intermediate certificate, he never regarded himself as being particularly bright. Although he did apply for the Air Force, he was called up to join the Army first. John was transferred to Darwin from Sydney several months after the bombing of Darwin by the Japanese in February 1942. Only after a few months in Darwin, John was recalled back to Sydney to the annoyance of his commanding officer, where he joined the Air Force. He could not be a pilot, and he could have been a navigator, but finished up being a wireless air gunner, which is known as a WAG. John was then transferred to England. He enjoyed his trip to England via America, as he had never been on board such a large ship and had never been overseas before. He was stationed in Brighton, England for several months, where he admits he enjoyed the sights and company of the local women. After he attended a wireless course in Scotland, he was asked where he'd like to be stationed, and of course he asked for Brighton. Instead, he was sent to Israel, and after 1 month, he was posted to Benghazi, where he would finally be selected to join the 454 Squadron. The usual course of selection is to be the most intelligent pilot, the smartest navigator, or the best WAG. And of course, things were looking pretty grim for John because he was one of the last to be selected. The crew of 454 Squadron included pilot Jeff Levy, navigator Alan McIntyre, WAGs John McMahon, and of course, Doc Hughes. They then had several operations together, perfecting their skills, escorting ships through the Mediterranean. They were now a really good working crew. Squadron 454 was then posted to Italy. This was a totally new ballgame for them. The enemy was shooting at them on their missions, and it was very dangerous. After completing a total of 70 operational missions with no lives lost, and I do repeat, no lives lost, they were Tour X, and 454 actually moved on to night flying, and the crew were then stationed semi-retired, as they say. Now that John was retired from touring, he was asked where he would like to be stationed, and of course, he asked for it, you guessed, Brighton. And so, with all the extra experience he had and his co-gunner Doc, they weren't going to Brighton, they ended up in Egypt to train other WAGs in the Air Force. They were so both disappointed that they decided to apply for a commission, and much to their surprise were accepted and given £50 to go to Cairo to be re-equipped. And after a few months of boring instruction, the European war ended, and before they were sent back to operate in Japan, the World War ended. So, they were sent home to Sydney, Australia. John returned to the job he had before going to war, but after only a short time left it, and after 9 months of trying to find another job, he finally accepted a job as a cleaner at a rooming house in King's Cross. After a year, he was sacked, and finally a job at the lowest level in the civil service, he finally found one. John's life really had been greatly affected by the war, and it took him some time to adjust to normal life back home. And of course, there was no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder in those days, and many men suffered. He met and married Charlotte, who was an ex-wife. He admits that she was the reason why he became more successful in life. They would become an awesome team together, but that is another whole wonderful story. After little persuasion, John suggested that Charlotte and he ask for a year's leave from both their companies, and they boarded a ship for England, which they ended up staying in London for around 6.5 years. And of course, in those 6.5 years, opening known as Morocco Brothers in Sydney. During this time, which is a period of around 9 years, they added to the family a daughter, and of course that's me. And I think that was the single most amazing thing that Charlotte and John had accomplished together. Just saying. From there, John decided that it was time to start his own business, which he did very successfully in a company they called Natural Stone Proprietary Limited, which was and still is well known for its beautiful natural stone materials. I would say there are buildings in Sydney too numerous to name that contain beautiful tiles, slabs, tables, granite, marble from his company. During this time, he and his wife travelled overseas and enjoyed exploring many countries and cities around the world. His last count that they both visited 52 countries. He often reflects on times during the war and how life was interrupted by war, and his future was forever changed through joining the 454 Squadron. He believes that on meeting so many different men who were doctors, lawyers, dentists from all different backgrounds gave him confidence, as he was often top of the class in his war exams. Through mateship, they developed very strong bonds that lasted a lifetime. Also, in visiting other countries around the world, he became fascinated with Italy, with its history and culture. He visited many places of interest. He saw things he'd never seen before. Went to the ballet, saw beautiful artwork, food, magnificent buildings. He even became a qualified yachtsman. At the age of 45, he decided to learn how to sail, and named his first boat after the plane he flew during the war, which was called Wandering Willie. Yeah, he had climbed to the top of the pyramids in Egypt, shook hands with the Pope, and was even invited to afternoon tea at Buckingham Palace to visit the Queen. So he and his wife Charlotte led a very interesting life together, and that was greatly influenced by the war and the 545 Squadron. 454 Squadron, sorry, I reversed it. So that's all I'd like to say today about John, and I'm quite pleased that I've been able to do this. But what's made me excited is that this is just the start. We're not really used to doing this sort of thing, but there are many people out here that we know nothing about, and we don't have stories about what they did in the war, where they came from, and I think it's up to us, and you young guys out there as well, to continue this on. So you've got grandfathers, brothers, uncles, cousins, relatives that you know about, and we would love to hear their story and continue on this togetherness we have on Anzac Day, and to remember these people, what they did for us, because it's very important. Okay, that's all I have to say for today.
Thank you.
Monday night in Bremoyne, John said to me that it was a great idea to ask for a relative to speak about their veteran and help bring their memory to life in all of our minds. Especially amongst our younger ones here, it is important that we pass on the tales of their exploits, their fears and deprivations as they got on with the job of winning the war, and then hear what it was like afterwards for them as they resumed their civilian life, sometimes with a great deal of difficulty. I think all of us should be able to do this as a mark of respect. You should be able to present your story just like Marie has done here today in under 15 minutes. So please let Pam know today if you would be prepared to prepare a talk at a future reunion, and we will cheer you on. Now, is there anyone else who would like to speak about any matter?
Well, I'm not going to tell a story about my dad, George Gray. That might be for another meeting, because that was beautifully done and it has to be something that's very well prepared. But I thought it's very interesting if we can all bring some memorabilia along, because I'm sure every family has something hidden away that would be fascinating for everybody to see. And I thought one of the things that they did as they flew out on their missions, they never knew if they were going to be shot down over enemy territory, taken prisoner or whatever. They all carried a silk handkerchief or scarf, or whatever you like to call it, in their uniform that was printed with a very detailed map. Now, does anyone have anything like that at home? Yes, see that there are some of that. So I brought some along today, which actually represent, I suppose, the theatres of war that 454 and 459 were in. Maybe, Rick, you might like to hold them up. This one, I think, there's one of North Africa, which is very stained and very well worn. And if you all remember, I don't remember all the details exactly, I tell you now that they were supporting the Australian divisions when they were moving on in Alamein and Tobruk. So that would have been one of the maps they would have had in case Rommel and his troops somehow prevailed and they were taken prisoner. Some of them are pristine, but the ones that were used extensively, I don't think they're blood stains. I think they're age stains. I don't think they're quite as dramatic as that. So that would have been, oh, that was
Blood.
Was this one North Africa? Anyway, people might like to come and have a look at it. Perhaps not Cameroon. That's Italy. I think if you turn it up the other way, it might look better as far as the globe's concerned. And there's also, there's Crete and Greece, and they represent all the theatres that they were in. Probably, John, did you have any of these scarves at all? Yes. Well, you know, Dad seemed to keep his very carefully, so they're just an amazing piece of memorabilia. They're rather a dramatic piece of memorabilia, I think. So they're all here if you would like to have a look. So that's all I'd like to say today.